Hi, everybody, and welcome to Be on Brand. I am super excited to kick off this podcast. It has been in my brain and in the works for such a long time now, but I'm super excited to just kick it off and start this first episode with y'all. I am Bianca Paggi, the CEO and founder of Branding with Bee, and we are a full service bilingual branding and marketing agency. And I have been wanting to do this podcast for such a long time because I love talking all things branding and marketing, but especially branding in the sense that a lot of people think that branding is either a luxury or that it's just branding, it's the logo and the colors, and that's it. But it is so much more than that. It's really the heart and soul of your branding, your business, and dictates everything else that comes from it. So this is something that I've been really wanting to do for a while now and just be able to share so many golden nuggets with you guys, bring on experts that have built that strong foundation of a brand and have been able to take their business to the next level, and bring in other guest experts that are, my adjacent peers that what they do and what I do really go hand in hand together. So I'm super excited for you guys and to just dive in and give you guys so many golden nuggets and just a little bit about me, since this is something new if you were not familiar with me and what I do in my past. So I have had my agency now for about 7.5 years, which is crazy to think that it's been that long already. I feel like we just started 2 years ago, but it has been such a blast and so many great learning opportunities. But prior to starting my agency, I worked in the corporate fashion industry for about 10 plus years, and I did everything under the umbrella of fashion. I did product development and production in the apparel and in the jewelry space, working with brands such as Donna Karan Collection, Saks Off Fifth, Men. We had Vera Bradley, Express Factory Outlets, to then even smaller brands, which was super cool. And I did that for a few years. And then I also did wholesale and marketing as well. Did some freelancing wholesaler at Burberry and some at Rag & Bone. And then I was an account executive for a high-end women's clothing brand based out of the UK and doing wholesale for them. So really everything that I've learned in my corporate career and working on the agency side is what I bring into working with my clients. And I love that I can do that because really, one, when we're doing branding for your brand and any type of business, right? It's essentially the heart and soul and that foundation of the business. It's the styling of the business. How are we going to show up? How are we going to talk? What is reflective of our brand? And so I love that I'm able to bring that from my corporate career into my career now with working with other founders. And I love it so much because it really is that kind of entry to barrier, if you will, when we are in front of a consumer and what's going to make them want to dive deeper and either say yes or no and become a paying consumer. And really using psychology to make those strategic decisions, because it is such an important part to it that a lot of people probably miss and don't think about it. And they're just like, oh, let's create something pretty. It looks good and let's throw it out there. But not having those back steps, if you will, of building into a brand that's going to be strategically successful based on psychology and emotion, since 93% of consumers' purchasing decisions are subconscious. So today's episode, obviously, to give a little background as to who I am and what I do, but we are going to be diving into branding is the business. So let's just start and reframing here what branding truly is, right? So, branding is not just the logos, the fonts, and the colors. Again, that is something that I always tell people from the get go, that that's not only what it is. That is the tip of the iceberg. And there's so much more substance below, right? It's all of the foundation that goes into it. So, again, branding is not just logos, your fonts, and your colors, it's your business reputation, right? It's that gut feeling someone has about your business the moment they experience it. And so I always love to say that branding is, the perception is reality, whether it's true or not. So we want to make sure that we're determining and controlling that narrative, because again, the branding is a perception, the marketing is what you say. Branding is what people believe. So again, the perception is reality, whether it's true or not. And that's something that we want to make sure that we are taking control of in the narrative of, because again, none of us are geniuses that we've invented something that's completely new and doesn't already exist. So how do we make sure that we are standing out from the crowd, that we are taking control of the narrative and saying, this is why we're different because of X, Y, and Z. And then really identifying, you know, who's our target audience? What do they want to know? What do they want to experience when purchasing from us as a brand, right? Whether we have a product-based business or we have a service-based business, this is the foundation part that we want to really identify, and truly identifying like who is our ideal client avatar. Because again, if we don't know who we're targeting and we're not able to speak to them and talk to them using their exact pain points, then we're going to lose them at the end of the day and we're just speaking to nobody. So again, I want to reframe and just hone in on the fact that branding is not just logos, fonts, and colors. It's really the business reputation and the whole experience that a consumer is going to have with your business. So, what's the role of branding in business strategy, anyways? Your brand's impact the pricing, the marketing, the hiring, the customer experience, and even the operations of your business. And a lot of people don't necessarily think about that when it comes to branding in their business and how they all kind of like intertwine with one another. Um, because the thing is, when you have a clear brand, it helps you charge premium prices and stand out in a saturated market, right? Again, like I mentioned, none of us are geniuses that we've invented something new that doesn't already exist. So, how are we going to develop a brand that one is going to stand the test of time and is going to be around for years, where it's not something that we're doing a rebrand over and over again, but it's going to be timeless. It's going to stand the test of time of the brand and of the business. So by that, it's going to then ultimately dictate who and what they're going to pay for our product or our service. So that's why I say we have to really know super well who our ideal client is, because again, they are the person who is purchasing from us. And so what we need to do is one, identify who they are and identify them and know them super well. What's their name? What do they like to do? What don't they like to do? Where do they hang out? How much do they make? Where do they go on the weekends? What do they do after work? All of those things, because again, that helps us as the founder and as the business identify and know, okay, I know that Lauren is going to love going to Lululemon after work to get some cute leggings, to go take it at her, strength training class, all those details. And then she's going to go to, Precious Juice afterwards to get a smoothie. All of those different details are so crucial because, again, we are knowing and learning and dictating and determining who the client is super well. So that way, anything that we're putting out there in regards to our brand, it will speak to them specifically. And they're going to resonate and be like, oh my God, this brand is speaking to me. I literally was just talking about those are my pain points or my issues, what have you, right? But that then is tapping into their subconscious, which then makes someone to then dive in deeper and see what other stuff going on, right? So that's one thing, right? And again, with the pricing part of things, the way that you're showing up is going to determine the value that the consumer is putting on to your product or your service. If you show up and you have this amazing product, there's an amazing service, but the way that it's showing up or presenting itself does not match back to that ticket price, people are going to instantly be like, wait, red flag. Why does this not match each other? Right. So we want to make sure that the way that we're showing up is matching back to the price that we're asking for. So that way it makes the sale that much easier for them to say yes, because one, it's showing up professionally, it's matching to the value and price that you were asking for. And then they trust you with that. Because again, all of those different things is what helps the customer build that like, know, and trust with you. So that way they convert into that paying customer. So again, let's just think about those things again. How does that impact the pricing? How does that impact the marketing, the hiring, the whole customer brand experience, right? And those are the things that you have to think, how does your brand go in through all of those areas. And so internal clarity ultimately is what equals external confidence. I always like to say, like, imagine your brand as a human. You are the human, right? If you go on an interview and there's two people, one person who is super qualified, has everything that meets the requirements for the job, but they show up in sweats, versus the other person who might not be as qualified, but shows up in a killer outfit. Who do you think is going to get the opportunity to get to that end point, that end sale, right? It's going to be the person who is showing up and has that amazing outfit, because the way that they are presenting themselves, they are controlling the narrative of their story as their brand, their personal brand. So the perception of that person versus the perception of the person who was the most qualified but was wearing sweats, someone is going to choose the person who dressed the part versus the person who is not showing up the right way. So just to give you kind of another example of how branding comes into play with consumers' purchasing decisions. Because when you know your brand, your whole team knows how to show up, right? Because again, you have to think about it. Once you have a team, if you have brick and mortars and stores, you are going to have people that are there and they are going to be a brand ambassador, essentially. They are going to be representing your brand. So you want to make sure that you have your brand foundation and how things need to be done, how things need to be said very clear, and implement that into your training strategy. Because again, that is going to then go through their mouth and go out to the public as your brand ambassador. And again, if they're not showing up and representing your brand properly, then that at the end of the day reflects negatively on your business, and whatever interaction a consumer has with them, that's going to be their perception. So I always like to say and use that example of Chick-fil-A, that who they do such a great job at this, that regardless of whatever Chick-fil-A you go to, they will always end their sentence with my pleasure, my pleasure, my pleasure. And if they don't, you're ultimately like, wait, you didn't say it right. That's not on brand. It's different. But they have done such a great job at the extension of their brand through their employees. It is always consistent, no matter what state you go to, where you're at. They will always be saying, my pleasure. It's that same customer service experience you're going to be experiencing. And just from the visual, you know that it is a Chick-fil-A, even if you didn't see the brand name, right? So let's dive into why so many brands fall flat. And one of the main reasons is that businesses confuse pretty with strategic. Without any real brand clarity, your marketing won't stick. And that's where branding without strategy is just decoration. We can always make something that's beautiful, right? Something looks beautiful, we put it out there, but then there's crickets. And most of the time, when that happens, is because we haven't put the strategy into place where we are really diving into the foundation of the brand and figuring out who our client avatar truly is. Because again, we are speaking to them. They are the ones who are going to be purchasing our product or our service. So what we have to do before we get to the fun part of things, of designing something that's beautiful and has all the, bells and whistles, if you will, is we have to get that brand foundation first. Because yes, it is very important to design something that is beautiful, looks professional, elevated, and matches where you want to be in 5 to 10 years, not where you're at now, because that's not where we're starting. We want to make sure we're putting our best foot forward and we're showing up where we want to be in 5 to 10 years, because that's what we're selling, right? We're not selling where we're at right now. So you got to fake it till you make it type thing. So with that in mind, before we get to the pretty, we have to identify that foundation. And what I always like to do with my customers is that we figure out what's that brand foundation, identifying who's your ideal audience, what do they like to do, what don't they like to do, but then really, doing a SWOT analysis as well, identifying the competitors and everything. But as I mentioned before, psychology and emotion are such a big part of a consumer's purchasing decision. Again, you will hear me say this stat multiple times anytime you hear me talk, but 93% of consumers' purchasing decisions are subconscious. So what does that mean? If 93% of consumers' purchasing decisions are subconscious, 7% is a conscious decision. We need to make sure that we're focusing on that 93%, because that's where the biggest decision-making process and, I guess, point of contention, you could say, is being done, whether they're going to purchase your product or not. So What does that mean? We have to make sure that, one, we're doing that market research. So that way, from the marketing perspective and the messaging and the tone of our brand, we are using the exact words that they are saying for their pain points. We are saying the things that they are looking for a product or a service. And we're making sure that we're saying how they want to feel when they're interacting or using a product or a service. So that way, subconsciously, when you say something about whatever their pain point is based on your product or your service that you're selling, they're like, oh my God, I was literally thinking this the other day. Those are the problems that I'm having with either personal, business, what have you. But you're using their exact words. So that way they're like, oh my gosh, they understand what I'm struggling with. Let me go check them out. Right. So then from the visual point of things, we want to make sure that we're identifying what are the ways that you want your audience to feel when interacting with your brand. Define those emotions. Define how you want them to feel at the end of it. What is the result experience and emotion that they're experiencing? And the reason I say that is because this is where even more psychology comes into play when we're determining what the visual elements will be of the brand. Because the idea is we want to implement and make sure that we're using color psychology and font psychology. Because again, when people see things, it makes them feel a certain way based on the colors and the fonts that are being used. And I always like to use the example. This is where you can tell I'm an 80s, 90s baby, that if you remember this book series Goosebumps, right? The font that they had on the cover was that gooey, slimy green, just really gross looking thing. And imagine if you got a Valentine's Day card with that font paired with red that said, I love you, or be my Valentine. That would be a very sketchy situation and would not convey the loving meaning that, say, if it said in that same red but had an italic or a script font, it would be more whimsical and loving, right? So again, that's one example of how visually colors and fonts paired together are going to make you feel a certain way. And I always love to get real life experiences because I think it's very helpful as individuals and just humans in general to see the things that we interact with on a daily basis. So a great example of color psychology and why certain colors are used for certain things. So let's take it here with fast food places. The colors red and yellow emit speed and hunger. So when you think of fast food industries and the brands, what do you notice? A lot of them have those colors. Think McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, Arby's, Sonic's. Again, they have those colors because subconsciously it's emitting and making someone feel the idea of hunger and speed. So again, that's why those industries, you will see those brands use those colors because of the emotions that it emits. Now think about banks. Most banks are going to be red and blue because it emits trust and honor and that relationship of sincerity. And that's exactly what you want from a bank perspective. You want your consumer to feel those things when they decide to choose to bank with you. So think of Bank of America, Wells Fargo. I was going to say Wachovia, but they don't exist anymore. They are Wells Fargo. You have Chase. All of their colors are in that realm of blue and red because of what those colors mean. Now let's go to Target. You see the colors orange and green. Those are colors that emit freshness and speed. And what do you see when you go down the aisle? You see a lot of the brands having those colors, right? Because again, it's all color psychology and colors make people feel a certain way. That's why at spas, they're going to have very cool, calming earth tones, greens and blues that are more subdued and that, neutral palette because it makes you feel a certain way. And that's how they want you to feel when you are at their location. So using the emotion from that brand foundation development to then dictate the right colors, the right fonts to use to develop your visual image and designing your logo and any type of, marketing or packaging collateral that you do need, you're doing it in a way that's strategic, that is going to be effective because again, we want to make sure that we are targeting our audience and getting into that subconscious part of their brain since 93% Again, 93% of the consumer's purchasing decision is subconscious. So we want to make sure we're doing everything strategically. So that way, when our goal is to drive revenue into the business, we're going to do it in a way that is going to make that yes that much easier. So again, I always like to say, if the bigger guys are doing it, why aren't you? And I'm sure I will be using these examples throughout the podcast, but one of my favorite movies is The Devil Wears Prada. And one of my favorite scenes that really depicts this part super great is when they are in the office and Miranda's trying to choose between the two turquoise belts that to Annie, it looks exactly the same, but she says, you think you made that decision to wear that blue lumpy sweater, but that decision was in fact made by the people in this room. And that's the whole thing that I'm trying to communicate to you guys is that as consumers, they do not make their purchasing decisions on their own. Everything is subconsciously influenced by the person who is selling the product or the service. So you as the brand and as a founder, you need to make sure that you are choosing the right things to influence your ideal audience so that they purchase the product or service that you have based on knowing them so well and tapping into their subconscious. Again, 93% of consumers' purchasing decisions are subconscious. And when we choose things to buy, or like, ooh, I like that, it resonates with me. You think that you're just purchasing it because you like it, but in fact, whoever is behind the brand, the company that is selling you that product or service, they know that you're going to like these color combinations with this look and feel and this smell, and that's why you're going to purchase it. So again, we have to make sure that we're dictating and making that decision for the consumer by knowing them so well and tapping into the subconscious part of their decision-making process. So that's where I just love to geek out on it because it's so interesting. It's not a conscious decision. There's a lot of psychology and emotion that goes into it. And that's why I'm super excited to be here and talking about this. So the mission for the podcast is to, really prove that branding is a business growth lever. When you do it right, it's going to lead to success in your business. And you'll hear from founders who've used branding, to grow their revenue, gain loyalty, and scale faster, and even sell at higher prices based on doing that. And, you'll also get that expert insight from, again, my peers who are in different industries, but that complement what we do. So I'm super excited to share that with you. So, you know, it's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of things going on, real talk, solo episodes, guest episodes, and really practical takeaways. My goal for this is I want you to really be able to learn and take away things that we are talking about and implement into your business, and maybe make you aware of things that you didn't know about your business in terms of branding and how to get to that next level. So, it's no fluff, just branding that sells and creating a buzz. So I am super excited to start this journey with y'all. And I want to make sure, again, I give you guys tangible takeaways on things to do. So download the free brand audit checklist. It's going to be in the notes of this episode. So I want you to use this powerful tool to evaluate your current brand, how it's performing, where it's not, and really see across the 5 pillars how things are going. We always have to take a look and take that step back and evaluate things all the time in our business. So link is in the show notes. Y'all, I am super excited to be here with you, and let's just continue and dive in. And I'm excited to create a buzz.